Hey everyone, so today we're going to be making a keto carnivore custard. We use these kind of things, do I recommend them every day? No. But for people who need them, we use them when you're trying to reverse autoimmune, especially vitiligo. We use this quite often. So this is what we're starting with, 500 milliliters of heavy cream. If you're in the US, look up how much that is in pints and quarts. I've already emptied that into this pot here. And we're just heating it up on a low heat. I've also put in, you see those little black seeds? Those are from this cardamom pod, right? In Hindi, we call this elaichi. These little seeds, you get the seeds out from there, crush them up a little bit, and put them in the cream right away because they take a little while to release their flavor. Now, while that's heating up, you want to start cracking your eggs. I'm just putting in whole eggs here. What I'm going to do, I'm only going to use the yolks. Now, you can use the egg whites. There's nothing wrong with making custard with the egg whites. The problem is you just have to watch the heat a little bit more. Because what will happen if you overheat the egg whites, they turn into this kind of scrambled egg consistency, which is not very nice. And of course, from our perspective, from the keto carnivore perspective, we want the yolks. That's where the vitamin is, that's where the nutrition is. The egg whites have protein, which is all right. Nothing wrong with egg white protein. But it's really the yolks that we're more concerned about. And now what I do just to separate them is I just use my fingers. So we take out the yolk here, separate it, trying to get as much of the white as possible to stay there. And put the yolk in there. Again, as much of the yolk as possible, stay behind. This is 5 egg yolks to 500 milliliters of cream. You could use less, you could even use a bit more. This is kind of the limit. When I was experimenting with this recipe, I was trying to see how many egg yolks I could fit into it, and 5 was about the limit. I can't really get much more than that without destroying the texture. Okay, the next secret ingredient I want to tell you guys about is glycine powder. Now this, you get it in 2 forms. You get it as a pill, which people like heavy weightlifters and so on take, maybe bodybuilders take it as a supplement. It's good for a lot of things. It's good for people with metabolic disorders. It's a good supplement to take for many people. But we're not using it as a supplement, we're using it as an amino acid, as a slightly sweet amino acid, which will be a sugar substitute. So I'm gonna put a little bit in there with my egg yolks. So traditionally this would be sugar that you put in. Depends how sweet you like it, but 1 scoop of this size scoop is really enough for me, maybe a little bit more, not much. Again, you'll have to experiment and see how much of the glycine you want. For me, this gives enough sweetness. Some people will want to add a little spoon of honey or maple syrup or something. That's fine. Using the glycine will allow you to reduce the amount of other sweetener you're using there. The cream is beginning to get hot, you can see. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the same whisk, just sort of give it a little stir, make sure it's looking okay. You don't want it to boil, but you want it to be almost at the point of boiling. And what I'm going to do just before that, I'm going to add just a few drops of vanilla extract. Now, if you were a purist and you didn't want to use any plant foods, you can easily skip the cardamom. You can skip the vanilla, super easy to do. So it was just beginning to sort of hint at boiling. I took it off the heat, maybe let it cool just a second. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna shock the eggs. So if I had a ladle, I don't have a ladle, but I would put 1 ladleful in there, but I'm just gonna estimate that that's about a ladleful. And I'm going to stir that in completely. What this does, it prevents getting that sort of scrambled eggs texture and just gives a little bit of that heat to the eggs and starts to cook them. And once it's well incorporated, I'm just gonna put the rest of the cream in there too. And give it just a very quick stir. Now in my case, because I have a third element here, which is this gelatin. So I've just used a little bit of powdered gelatin. This is powdered gelatin from the halal shop. You can get wherever you get powdered gelatin. Not much, a small spoon, small teaspoon. And I'm just going to allow that to absorb some of this water, and it'll go in at the very end. So you never want to put gelatin while the stove is on. You always put the gelatin when the stove is off. But you have to rehydrate it a little bit, right? So now we're going to go back in, put the custard back into the dish. and put the dish back on the stove. Okay, now this stove is a little bit hot. It runs a little bit hot. This is a gas burner. So you have to be quite careful. You never want to overheat the custard. Again, you'll get that scrambled eggs texture that we're going on. So you're looking very closely until it sort of thickens a little bit. And you should be able to tell, if you have a wooden spoon, you can use the wooden spoon, and if you move it, you know, if you have the liquid and you move it and it holds its shape, in other words, you see the mark of your finger on that wooden spoon, that means that the custard is ready. This shouldn't take more than about 2 minutes, I would say, at low to medium heat. If you have a low, it really should be on a low heat. If you put it on a low heat, then you might be able to do it in 5 minutes. That might be preferable. But you see it's already thickening. I don't know if you can see that change in texture, but the texture is already thickened a bit. So we're going to take it off the heat, make sure we don't get any scrambled eggs here. Keep stirring. And yeah, that's, so if it wasn't, if you can take it off and you can also put it back on if you feel like it needs a bit more cooking. But to me, that's looking pretty much done. So I'm going to go back to my gelatin here and see that it's rehydrated a little bit. And I'm going to mix that in. Now, when you mix it in, of course, because you've just mixed in some water too, it is you're going to lose that sort of thick consistency that you had. That's okay. Just keep it going. At this point, you might want to give it a little taste, but just keep in mind that the sweetness, it's hard to estimate the sweetness at this point. The sweetness, it's going to be a different level of sweetness, less sweet when it cools. So when you taste it now, it should be a little bit more sweet than you like. I don't really like to put it in to the fridge, you know, scalding hot. So just let it sit for 2 minutes, not long. Now I'm going to pass it through a sieve. Why do we pass it through a sieve? Because although we've done everything right, there shouldn't be any scrambled eggs. There's still a little bit of that sort of textured egg thing that can come. Also remember, we put that cardamom in and other things, so any debris will just come out. Now you can do this with a spatula, or even just a whisk should work fine. Once you've got your custard here, you've got a couple of choices. The best thing is probably to do it in a fridge overnight. But what I find is I make it and I don't have the patience to wait for it in a fridge overnight. I want to eat it the same day. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to put it in a freezer for 3 hours. Just make sure you set a timer, because if you do too long, it's going to be a mess. 3 hours in a freezer is perfect for setting it, and then move it to the fridge or a fridge overnight. Or some people even eat it hot. You can have it hot over some fruits or whatever you like. So that's cardamom custard. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one. So this is what it looks like after 3 hours in the fridge. There's just a little bit of ice that has come. That'll be because we put it in when it was still steaming a little bit. So that steam will cause condensation, and then that will ice up. But in general, the texture looks fine. If you wanted to put it for a couple of hours in the fridge, that would be even better. Let's have a taste. Yeah, it's great. It's, you know, like I say, there's a little bit of ice on the edges, but you can always adjust the time in the freezer. You can always do it in the fridge. So good stuff. Not super sweet. If you want it more sweet, you can always add a little more sweetener. But it's good stuff. You can really taste the cardamom. So thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.